Okay, so it looks like we have a quorum there.
I'll have a quorum in the room, physical room.
Okay, I'll take that as a yes. It sounded very distant, but all right. With that said, I guess we can go ahead and get started with our meeting today. Aside from the usual routine, we're going to be focusing on a review of our development and performance standards in Article 27. Really, we're diving into the heart of a new ordinance and all the new requirements. So in order to change those, we should probably know what we're already working with. Okay, with that said, I'm going to move on to the next slide. Our agenda, we're going to go through our roll call. We do have to consider the minutes from our September meetings when those were both approved. There were a handful of people that were not admitted to the Zoom room at the time, so that is not compliant with the Brown Act. So we are going to have to look at those minutes again, hopefully quickly. And then consideration of our last meeting on October 2nd. And then we'll dive into the review, and then we'll open up for public comment. Okay, moving on. Ruby, I'm going to let you go ahead and take care of the roll call.
So Nora Tobacco, present. Catherine Benjamin. Hold on. Andrew, can you hear that?
A little bit.
We're gonna like hold it, like, so keep it close to you for now, and when we need to speak, just let us know, pass it around. That way
okay. And if my mic is sounding better, I could go through the roll call just for everyone else in the Zoom room listening. So okay, let's go ahead and move on with the roll call. William Weiss.
Present.
Jan Coppinger. Take that as a not present. Catherine Vanderwall.
Here.
Rebecca Harper.
Here.
Jennifer Smith. Okay. Nara Delbaca.
Present.
Robert Geary. And I believe just out of view is Paul Blues from the fire districts. Present. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Moving on to consideration of the minutes. I'll go ahead and pass this on to everyone there in the room.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. We'll take up the minutes from September 5th. Does the task force have any questions or comments? Will.
So the reason we were trying to do this was the Brown Act issue and not able to listen on to it, but they know, to our knowledge, any issues with or corrections.
Correct. This is out of an abundance of caution because there were people who had not been let into the Zoom room by the time we approved them. And so we are reconsidering them with no requested amendments to make sure that we gather all public input.
And we do have a public comment for the minutes. I believe it was the public comment we missed from last time. Holly Harris has her hand raised. So whenever you're ready, we can open up to public comment on the minutes.
Excellent. Are there any questions from the task force? No. Okay, then we'll open it up for public input. Go ahead, Holly. Oh, and just so you know, we're talking about the September 5th minutes first.
Correct. No, I understand what you're saying. It's been so long that I don't know which one's which. Also, I have to tell you that we cannot hear a thing that's being said down there. So I have no idea. All I heard was opening up the minutes. Anyway, all I'm going to do, there were discrepancies. We were not in the room, so we couldn't, say that in order to get the minutes corrected. So all I'm going to do is read off the email that I sent to you because I'm not sure which is which at this point. Anyway, what I had wanted to say was the text for the cannabis events is different than it is in the table. The type 13 distribution, both type 13s changed, but only one is listed in the minutes. And I don't have down in my notes which, if it was the September 5th or 18th. The MP designation was not on the table from the 9/18 packet, but it appeared in the final version, even though there was no discussion on the topic, nor is it in the minutes. Type 5, the minutes from 9/5 do not include PDC. And type 9, the minutes from 9/5 do not include SR, CR, or U. And that was everything that I had.
Do you know the date, Holly, can you hear me now?
A little bit.
Okay, could you please tell me what date that was of your email?
The date was 10/16. Well, actually, I sent an email during the meeting saying that there were discrepancies, but I did not hear back. And so then I sent the email to you and Andrew on 10/16.
Okay, good. Thank you. Any further public input? Go ahead, Sarah.
Hi there. I'm just echoing what Holly said that it's virtually impossible for us to hear you. We can barely hear you, Maria, but when anybody else in the room speaks, we can't hear. We can hear Andrew loud and clear, but not the room.
Okay, thank you. So we'll pass it around. I'll start. So, okay, can you hear me better now? Everybody? Sarah? No? Sarah, you're unmuted. Can you hear me better now? I'm holding.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you great.
Okay, so no, I cannot hear you any better, Maria. And also the chat function is disabled, so we can't chat in to answer your questions about can you hear us?
Okay, we're going to take a 3-minute break to see if we can figure out our technology so that we have adequate communication. We're going to switch this thing. Yeah. Before 1 o'clock. So.
Yeah. No, and it just did.
That in
Everyone's
itself
saying
was-
it's not any better. So I just changed it right now to go back to get off of the little microphone that we're using. So is it any different? Because I just switched it.
Can you guys hear us?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you hear us
Yep.
better now?
Yeah, that's much improved.
Oh,
Okay.
good. Okay.
So Sarah.
Yeah, much better.
So we're gonna have to do that.
Super duper. Okay. So thanks for everybody hanging through with us with trying the new microphone to make it better. Apparently that didn't work.
No.
We're gonna go back to what was working before. And okay, so we are still going over the September 5th minutes. Is there any further input on September 5th minutes? Holly, your hand is still up, but did you have anything to add from your last comment?
Yeah.
If you're speaking, we cannot hear you. Nope, she muted. Okay. So we'll bring it back to the task force.
So to the extent, I took a few notes, so I realized they were emailed to you guys ahead of time, but I mean, do you feel as though those details are reflected in the minutes that we're looking at here or not? I guess is the question I have following up on Holly's comment.
I'm not able to answer that question because I did not, I have not had a chance to review her minutes or her email against the minutes. So if the task force would like to carry these over, that's fine. But I don't have an answer to that question.
Is there a way that we could pull her email up and
Yeah, go for it.
give it a look?
Yep.
It depends, I mean, how extensive is it?
It didn't seem to have too big of a list, but
Okay.
it's with stuff,
That way we can start on a clean slate.
yes. Okay, let's see. Holly, did you email that to Ruby already also, or was it just to Andrew and me? Oh, Andrew might be working on it right now. Excellent. Good job. All right.
Okay, it went to you and Andrew.
Okay, I think Andrew's working on that right now.
Yes, I'm seeing if I can go ahead and pull it up here.
Thanks, Andrew.
Do we want to move on to the different minutes?
Yeah,
While he's
let's do
working
that.
on that?
Good idea.
No time wasted.
Okay, we'll table the September 5th minutes for now, and move on to September 18th minutes. Are there any questions from council? Seeing none, is there any public input? Holly? Oh, wait, yeah, go ahead, Holly.
Hi, I just wanted to reiterate that the list that I gave you, because it's been so long, I think some of it was from the 9:18 minutes, but I'm not positive.
Okay, I thought you read the September 5th minutes.
I did, but what I said to you was the MP designation was not on the table from the 9:18 packet. It
Okay.
appeared in the final version despite no discussion on the topic in the interim nor in the minutes.
Okay, so your email may pertain then to both sets of minutes.
Possibly.
Okay.
Okay, we'll move on to the second.
Yep, let's do that. Tabling the 9:18 task force meeting and going on to September 2nd. October 2nd. Questions, corrections, amendments from task force yet? Seeing none, is there any public input on the October 2nd minutes? Seeing none, hope you guys can hear me as we'll bring it back to the task force. This is the October 2nd minutes.
I move to approve the October 2nd minutes.
I'll second it.
So that was Rebecca motion, Paul is seconding. All those in favor? Is there anyone opposed? Also, the minutes will reflect that Jennifer Smith is now present in the meeting. Thank you. Okay, let's go back and talk about September 5th and 18th. Do we want to still wait for Andrew to bring up that email and revisit that, or do we want to table that to a new meeting? Because I
Looks like
can't
he's-
read that.
Oh. That is. That's an eye test.
Right?
I'm failing.
I'm not, but I can't read it out loud to you.
What is the will of the task force? We could distribute that email then, if we wanted to table it to the next meeting, we could distribute that email for consideration of the task force in your own time. Or we could have Andrew read it.
Yeah, I could read it. It looks like the email came in with two parts. The second part is concerning the minutes. The first part was more about the Earth meeting. So,
Wait, what is the will of the task force?
I would really like to get through with these past minutes.
Yeah, so
Okay.
let's listen to the part of the email that's about the minutes.
Awesome. Go ahead, Andrew, thanks.
okay. So on October 16th, Holly wrote, additionally, there are some discrepancies in the zoning permit table that should be looked at the last COTF meeting. There were issues with the 9:5 and 9:18 draft minutes that could have been rectified. Both Angela and I were in the Zoom room waiting room before 1 p.m., yet we were not allowed into the Zoom meeting until after the minutes had been approved. I did email you and Andrew immediately during the meeting about discrepancies, but did not receive a response, and we were not given the opportunity to make any public comments. Here are the discrepancies from the September 18th table in the packet, the final minutes and the final table online. This is compounded by the numerous table changes which are not dated nor included with the minutes. One, the text for cannabis events is different from the table, as I'm assuming from the table to the list. Two, type 13 distribution, both type 13s changed, but only one is listed in the minutes. The MP use permit was not on the table from the September 18th packet, but appeared in the final version despite no discussion on the topic in the interim nor in the minutes. 3, type 5, minutes from September 5th do not include PDC. And 4, for type 9, the minutes from September 5th do not include SR, CR, and U. I also wanted to point out that I have sent in questions to CDD and asked that they be brought up at the Board of Supervisors meetings, in particular the last meeting on temporary structures. I was told if I sent them in, they would be addressed, but they were not brought up. Thank you, Holly Harris.
Cool. So let me just add clarification on that last part. When questions are submitted, we actually attach them as public input. We don't necessarily read them to the board because sometimes we can get multiple items of public input and we do not read them to the board. So, but we do submit it to Johanna, the clerk of the board, to make sure that it does get added to the public record and goes before the board for their consideration.
Bruno did reference some of those.
Oh, he did? Okay, good.
Yeah,
Good.
in the last Cannabis task force, Board of Supervisors hearing.
Yeah, so sorry for that misunderstanding, Holly.
They were at least referenced. I think the majority of those concerns are related to September 18th minutes and this list of types that's presented. But I don't know that, I mean, you rectified some of the issues with lists and chart comparison, but I don't know that there's any way to determine that without the chart attached to the minutes.
So yeah, all I see on September 5th is under item 7, the PDC. It wasn't included.
Was it supposed to be?
I don't know, but that was the comment.
Yeah, it was included under item 5.
It's actually, it is in item 7 as well, on 9.5.
EDC?
No, it's not mentioned, but that is, I'm assuming, one of the places where it all has been inserted, right? It's my note from what I've just heard you read. Somewhere else.
So let's talk about then if we had added that, and because this is a cultivation permit, and when it said that when it was listing all these other ones, no other commercial zone is listed. So I'm not sure if PDC was included, but does anybody remember that?
Yes, not for a type 5, it would have been a type, what's nursery?
4.
Nurseries, yeah, so we might have had it in.
But that's not, number 4 is not part of
Not
item
included,
number
right.
7.
Yeah,
That's why it would not be included.
Yeah.
Either.
okay.
But it is included under item 5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
So
But that's
On-
delivery, so that makes sense. Yeah.
what might help your memory, on the 18th, we had gone through a handful of final edits to the table. That was the date we finally approved the table. And I have this version 2, which was saved at 1:35 p.m. However, we continued to change it to version 3, which was then saved at 1:36 p.m. And then version 4 at 1:38, then version 5 at 1:42, and then I have this final version, final approved at 2:33 p.m. from September 18th. This as being the final table.
You should
So-
look at that final, right? Because she was saying so there's issues with the events. I'm not sure what that meant.
I do believe that some of the stuff from the final table was not updated in the final list, but I think by that following Monday, Ruby and I had addressed that.
Can
then-
I just make a statement here? If I remember correctly, and Maria, we did talk about it during the Earth meeting, the temporary special events on the text say that it's only allowable as an incidental use.
So it's missing the asterisk.
Well, it depends upon whether you want temporary special events on the table to be only incidental or you want them to be regular. I mean, one of the things has to change. I don't know which one it needs to be.
I
I do remember how.
I'd like to give public comment.
Wait a second, Sarah, hold on.
I think, yeah,
You remember that discussion?
Yeah, but I don't remember what the ultimate decision was on that, but I do remember us having to talk about incidental for temporary special events.
it may have been in conjunction with like cultivation sites or something like that. I'm not really sure, but generally special events shouldn't be.
There would have been
because-
incidental because
Yeah,
they're
it wouldn't-
one-offs to begin with.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
so instead of us
And they're not
figuring out,
licensed facilities either, so it can't be incidental. A lot of them aren't.
I can understand the frustration with continual delays on these minutes, but I really think we need to go back to the video and see what we actually did do.
We-
And then we'll come back. So let's table both these, September 5th and 18th till the next meeting.
Do you think
Okay.
it would be possible for correspondence that's received by staff to be distributed to task force members? Like Holly's email, for example, correspondence like that that's sent to you guys, would it be possible for it to also be sent?
Yeah, in fact, what we want to do is not have just constant distribution of items, but what we could do is items that we do receive prior to the posting of the agenda, let's just add it like public input, just like we would at the board or the planning commission. That way you have it. And then after the posting of the agenda, we save it and green sheet it.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it that way then, yeah.
And on the 18th, we did approve this table. We weren't really looking at the list, so we were later going back and making the list match the table. So just something to consider.
But the minutes need to match the table, I think is the issue, otherwise it's not legal.
That's
Yeah,
correct,
so
too.
then at our next meeting, we'll have, on the agenda that's sent out to everybody, the table, the list, which is kind of the word list of the table, and then the minutes. And any public input that we receive up until the posting of that agenda.
Hi, you opened public comment, but then went to decision and discussion by the task force without hearing the rest of the public comment.
All right, is there any further public comment before we make a motion for this?
Ali and Sarah have their hand raised.
Awesome, go ahead, Sarah, you've been waiting.
Hey, so I totally agree that the way to actually make sure everything is consistent is to go back and review the video. I don't think anything less will ensure that we're all on the same page. I am happy to also go back and review Holly's comments and cross-check the zoning table myself. I've spent a lot of time with this. And I know for sure that the temporary special events was not approved as incidental to any license type. It was going to be treated as a conditional review not conditional review, as a permit that you could apply for just like a special event permit, and it could be in any one of these zones and did not need to be next or incidental to any permitted cannabis activity.
Thank you. Go ahead, Holly.
Oh, hi. I just had a couple of little comments here. When you, I was going to ask if you could include the table on text, et cetera. So that's absolutely great. But could you also date or rev level these tables? Because I have to tell you, I can't begin to tell you how many of these things I have printed out. And then I have to go print it out again because I don't know if it's the current one. But it would be really great if you could do something so that we would know it was different. And then I just had one separate question, which I don't know if is here now, but why are there two type 13s that are identical on there? I mean, one says transportation only, and the other says transportation only self-distribution, but they're identical. Wouldn't you want to have it just be one?
So those are not identical.
They're not identical. It doesn't really come from us. It's from DCC, from the
Okay.
state regulation. They basically, one costs more money. If you're just getting a type 13 for yourself, self-distribution, it's a little cheaper. If you want to be able to move the cannabis from your farm and then also help your buddy out next door, then you pay a little more and you get the other type 13. So
Got it. Thanks.
Okay, wait, Holly, your hand actually just went up instead of down. Okay, down. All right, bring it back. Mars. Oh, Andrew, it shows a notification that Margot raised her hand, but I don't see her hand up.
Oh, I didn't catch that. I was looking at the table. Margot, you can go ahead and make a comment if you want.
Why doesn't
There's her hand.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. I have a suggestion in line with Holly's comment about keeping track of versions. And what I suggest is taking a note from the IT world and use version control. And that includes dating your document your file, giving it a name, and also including a table with a date and actions taken to that table, such as added such and such, deleted such and such, changed such and such, task force approved, and the date. It might help keep everybody's sanity. Thank you.
Thank you, Margot. We'll definitely keep all these in mind because we do have one other table to consider as we get into development standards. So we'll definitely try to instill some sort of tracking thingy on it so that everybody stays on the same page. Because I know I've got about 40 of these different tables in my file in my office. So yeah, I totally hear you. Okay, so we'll bring that back to bring the 9:05 and 9:18 minutes back to the task force. What is the will of the task force?
You need to move the table? Okay.
Yeah, let's do that just so we have it on the minutes officially. So we'll start with September 5th.
I want the table, September 5th meeting to the September 5th minutes to the next meeting.
Second.
All right, so that was Nora and Will, table to next meeting. Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. We'll carry those over. And then 9:18 minutes.
Move to table the 9:18 minutes pending further review.
Second.
Great. Will and Rebecca, table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're going to carry those minutes over to the next meeting as well. Thanks, everybody. On October 2nd, our next item then, and I'm just checking. Can you hear me, guys? Andrew, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. Okay. So then we'll go on to our next item, the review of Article 27, Development and Performance Standards for Commercial Cannabis. Take it away, Andrew.
Mute himself.
Andrew, you are muted.
Sorry, I'll start over. So with that said, we've been looking at this really basic outline of what our task is with the new ordinance, Article 73. And so far we've gone over purpose, which is our vision statement, applicability, and uses permitted, as we've just gone through that table for zoning licensing. We are now getting into development standards and performance standards. And as I had mentioned, development standards lean a little bit more towards area-specific standards, things that affect the community environment, and we'll look at size and density and setbacks. Performance standards are a little more site-specific, and they affect, things on site that can affect the environment and, air quality, electrical aspects. But with that said, in our actual ordinance, it's a little bit more complicated because our whole section that covers development standards and performance standards also covers application requirements. It also covers plans required. It also covers permit processing and administration. And they're all kind of in a interesting order. If you've been able to look over the agenda packet, I kind of color coded some of what was going on in our ordinance. I'll walk you through it a little bit more today, but keep in mind that our current ordinance has a lot of this mixed in, and then they're a little bit different. It looks like they're the same standards, but when you're in the cultivation section, they're a little different than manufacturing or processing. So I'll show you a little bit more of what that looks like. So moving on, first of all, just to keep in mind, Article 27, the title of Article 27 is Uses Generally Permitted. So many of our other articles are on our base zoning district. So if you're in agricultural zoning district, there's an article for that. Everything you need to know about that zoning district is in the article. Sorry, Maria, are you pointing at something?
Right. We couldn't see the screen. We're good now. Go ahead.
You're good? Okay. All right. So, with that all said, there's also, an article dedicated to R1, residential zoning. With that said, there's uses by right that are outlined in each of those articles, but then all other uses fall into different levels of how we permit it as a county. And that is all covered in Article 27. The majority of it, can you guys see the mouse on the screen?
Yep.
So down here at the bottom, the majority of the job that we have to do is Article 2713, Section AT through AAC, which covers all of our commercial cannabis activities. For non-commercial activities, with a zoning permit and a zoning clearance, you can have adult medicinal use. That's also in our outline, but I think it's not at the top of the priorities for us to go through. Okay, anyway, this gives you a little bit of an outline of what's going on in Article 27. So when we look at that last section of Article 27, the last half of it, we have 2711 Table B. That's the table we just worked with for quite a while to get through. And then it gets into Section 13. AT is the first part. It covers commercial cannabis cultivation. Then AU through AW is manufacturing. AX through AZ is distribution. AA is processing. And then AB and AC are testing labs and micro businesses. So the majority of that section is Section AT, commercial cannabis cultivation. And it really covers these three basic types of outdoor cultivation. Or not outdoor cultivation, sorry, cultivation. You have indoor cultivation where you're in a, properly permitted, industrialized, built out structure, full electrical, full plumbing. You tend to see this type of cultivation in more urban and suburban areas. Then the majority of what we deal with here in Lake County is mixed light cultivation. As you can see, you're in a greenhouse here. You've got a mixture of both natural light and artificial light. Whereas you have outdoor cultivation where there's no electrical, there's no permanent structure. We do, as you know, we've just approved temporary hoops. This kind of shows how those temporary hoops can protect the cannabis from both the elements and contaminants, as well as you can add a level of light deprivation with it. So with that said, this is the bulk of what we deal with. However, we got to cover everything else first. Or as well, not first. But diving into that section, and before I do, let me pull up a PDF real quick, just to go back to this PDF for all of you to review. I'm not going to go through all of it, and thank you for bearing with me through some kind of dense topics. But this is actually the second half of Article 27. And it's color coded here in this section right there. So everything that's in green, you can see is commercial cannabis cultivation. And that's the majority of this second half of the section. Then everything in yellow covers manufacturing, light blue is distribution, purple is processing, testing labs, and micro businesses. It doesn't help a whole lot in these last four, but in these top two, it really does help. So as you scroll through the document, the first thing you come into, and this is something we want to consider, whether do we want to dive right into everything we want to talk about with just this table for the user to interpret. But with that said, it jumps right into these development standards, general requirements, and restrictions. And you have this table here that kind of lists out overall setbacks for cultivation. It's a little tricky to use. It's a little tricky to read. It can be tricky to make sense of, to be honest with you. And as a lesson from our last table, we don't necessarily have to fix this and recreate it and make it work. We can take a different approach, but I'll leave that up to you guys to decide. But then as you scroll through, obviously you can see all of this section is dedicated to cultivation, and you get into subsections and subsections of subsections and so on. So I kept a kind of outline over here on this side so you can always kind of look over and know exactly where you're at in the document. Moving on, this is everything we have that covers cultivation. Then we get into manufacturing. One thing to keep in mind in this first manufacturing section, it's type N infusion and type P packaging and label. It is section 2713, subsection AU. But the rest, every other section pretty much that covers manufacturing, distribution, and processing will reference all the guidelines set up in AU. It always starts off, hey, look back at AU and see what we said there, and that applies here. That's kind of tricky for people to catch. They often overlook that. So with that said, you kind of can take a look at it. It's something that you really can't just digest in a day or a month. Or I've been here for a couple of years and I'm still digesting it. So with that said, I hope these colors and these outlines help you navigate that as you start to review it. And I'll bring it back to our table. Hang on, let me just minimize this. So going back, that first table in this slide and the next covers some of those general development standards that really kind of matter and that people probably want to revisit. The minimum size for the different license types. Here we have 20 acres for these types, whereas it jumps down to 5 for other type 1Cs. You've got your setbacks from the property line, generally 100 feet, both throughout for all cultivation, and then 200 feet from off-site residences. I know this is something that people have mentioned that they want to revisit. For most licenses, we really don't look at plant count, the number of plants. We can assume the majority of our outdoor growers are here in type 3, and they're going to look at the new option for the type 5. But we just have to assume whatever square footage that they are granted for canopy, they're going to try to maximize as much canopy within that square footage as possible. We have a minimum fence height and a maximum fence height, and then a maximum canopy area. So something to consider as you look through it. And then these next couple of slides, I'm not going to get into every detail, so we can wrap up a little bit early. I know it's probably been hard to pay attention to some of this stuff, but this is essentially every part of that section of Article 27 dedicated to commercial cannabis. As mentioned, we start off with commercial cannabis cultivation, AT. It jumps right into that table with development standards. Then it goes right into general requirements, and it has all different kinds of requirements for all of this, these aspects of what we require. It covers then prohibited activities, protection of minors, and exclusion zones listed out in this way. However, if you move on with the outline, then I'm skipping that last part, permit process. It will go on to some more requirements, but then type AU has permit requirements, notifying state agencies of revocation. That's kind of just thrown in there out of, I don't know if it necessarily fits in that spot, but it's some interesting information. And then you get into, the requirements for state and county maintained roads, and then records. And then it goes on to this long list of 34 other things that you need to check. We get into some exclusion zones or setbacks as well, but it's listed out in just a different way. Here, number 25, setbacks for manufacturing. It's basically the same as in cultivation, but it's just written out in a different way. So that can add to some of the confusion. And then moving on, we've got our 34 items, finally getting back to renewals. If you go on to the other license types, they all start off with, as mentioned, they need to meet the conditions of 2713 AU, which was that list of 34 other items. It goes on to more standards. Here we get into volatile standards. One thing to keep in mind that they have different setbacks when you get into manufacturing. We also have a lot of references to a lot of fire codes that people have concern whether or not they've been applied to our ordinance. They're there. We've got a long section on Chapter 38 of the California Fire Code. Again, though, as we write it out with such specific language, the fire codes change and those numbers change. So that's something to consider too. Moving on, again, type 11 distributor licenses are it gets briefer and briefer because they've covered most of it, but it's just a weird kind of layering of guidelines, development standards and performance standards. But with that said, I'm going to wrap it up there and kind of leave it to the room to discuss further any questions, any clarifications. This is just a starting point. I'm hoping you guys can take this with you, and when you find some free time, start reviewing it and starting to get to know what we're dealing with in order to improve it and make it better and make it more user-friendly. One concluding note, after going through all of it and knowing it so well, I think it covers everything fairly well. I think one of the issues that the public has with it is just from both the cultivators and people trying to understand cannabis, it could be much more user-friendly. It could be organized in a way that it just makes the whole process easier for everyone. So. All right, I'll just go ahead and pass it on back to the room there.
So in our agenda, it says review of Article 27, but I think a better description would probably be introduction of Article 27, because As we have talked about before, we're not going to be making recommendations yet until we know from the board which permit types and zoning districts they think are appropriate. However, it has been discussed or proposed prior in a previous meeting that we start sort of just digging into the cannabis cultivation development standards. And because most of that cultivation is already included in our zoning ordinance. And so I think that it could be, it looks overwhelming when we first start looking at it. It's overwhelming when you first start as a planner too. So we may break some of these up into thematic units, like we might talk about exclusion areas in general and then apply them to the different license types. We're gonna work to find ways to agendize different areas of our development standards in such a way that it is meaningful and easily sort of absorbed by the task force for its consideration. So Andrew gave you the scary introduction into all the stuff that's actually involved. But basically what you just need to know is that all of these regulations in the ordinance were established for the purpose of supporting an industry that was just becoming regulated, as well as ensuring minimum health and safety standards and minimal impacts on the surrounding neighborhoods, so that these use permits would be an asset to the communities and minimize any sort of detraction, any sort of negative impacts. So that's the mind frame. There was a lot of fear also when the board first did it in 2014. And so one of the benefits that the task force has now is all of these years of the work that we have done on the use permits, as well as the businesses and their activities in real life. And so we'll be looking at that now in order to update this to sort of streamline, keep what we think is helpful and relevant and needs to be kept, streamline things where we can, and use the years of data that we've now had from these businesses being in business to sort of figure out where are we now and where do we recommend that the board consider that we go as far as setbacks, exclusion zones, minimum acreage densities, things like that. So don't worry about having to say anything right now. Just enjoy this section. And know that we're gonna break it up and talk about it in ways that are that you'll be able to visualize. Anybody have any questions about the packet code? I like how Andrew color coded that. That's actually pretty helpful. And so we have that online, right? So everybody can access that. Awesome.
Yes, that document's online currently. And I'll convert this PowerPoint to a PDF and get it uploaded right after this meeting. So
cool. All right. Are there any questions in the Zoom room? Andrew, I'm leaving that up to you to identify any hands raised.
We have one hand raised. Holly Harris has her hand raised.
Go ahead, Holly.
Oh, hi. It's just a generic question, which you might have answered before, and I've just forgotten about it. But anyway, if you go back to the different type 1, type 2, type 3 cultivation, and now one's throwing in type 5 for the larger size cultivation. Once type 5 comes about, if it comes about, can somebody still go back and get like 20 type 3 or type 3A, type 3 outdoor things, or would they have to get X amount of type 5?
I don't think they would have to get it. The DCC would say you can, rather than pay for 30 licenses, you could pay for one. It's one type 5, which covers anything over than an acre. So, it's just common sense to go with that one. It just wasn't available when the ordinance was written the first time.
Right. So one thing that I would like, people to think about is the fact if you have, say a 60 acre grow, and I mean 60 acres of growing, not 60 acre parcel, it's possible that one needs to look at a larger setback than what is available in the type 3. But one can just because there's that much more, unless, in the county, they designated that if you have 30 acres, you have to go with, of growing, you have to go with X amount of type 5 and not type 3. Am I making myself clear?
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. I think it's an interesting idea for like a proportional setback. But with that said, it's not going to change what's allowed at the moment. It's just they're going to get a different license type.
Right,
unless we change what's allowed, but it's still the 20-to-1 ratio for acreage. You need 20 acres of land within your parcel for 1 acre of outdoor, whether it's a type 3 outdoor or a type 5 outdoor.
No, I understand that, but it seems to me that if you have a huge grow, as opposed to, a regular, smaller grow, that one really needs to look at the setbacks, et cetera, just because it is a huge grow. But if they're allowed to get, 20 type 3 licenses, then they can squeeze in on the lower setbacks. I'm just throwing this out as a thought.
And that's exactly what we'll be talking about with development standards.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Good. Is there any further public input?
No, not at this time.
Awesome. Okay. We are going to also keep this as a continually posted attachment so that it's easy reference for everybody. You won't have to remember which meeting it was that we passed this out as we go forward. Telling Ruby, she's nodding. Excellent. Okay, did we have any further questions on this agenda item? All right. We'll move on to any public comments on items that are not on today's agenda. Do we have any public comments?
No one's raising their hand.
Seeing none in the conference room or in the Zoom room, we will move on toward adjournment. When is our next meeting, Andrew?
I believe 2 weeks from today. Let me pull up the calendar real quick and confirm that.
Task force. Non-agendized conversation?
Public comments.
Oh, yeah, that was just right now. Public comments number 7
Oh, I was thinking it was just.
on non-agendized.
Got it.
Yeah.
What about it?
I just wanted to ask a timeline of, the zoning chart. If
Oh,
if we
where it
could
is
make-
right now?
Yeah, make everybody aware
Sure.
of the dates for the ag advisory and whatnot.
Yeah. So just as an update, we have the Agriculture Advisory Committee meeting next Monday on the 20th. And that is the date for them to get us any recommendations they may have. And let's see, that's the 20th, so I'll be able to get, I think we have it tentatively scheduled then for the next available public, planning commission meeting, which is December 14th.
14th.
Yeah.
And that's scheduled for 8 a.m.
It starts at 9,
Which one?
the planning
Ag
commission
advisory,
meeting.
no.
Oh, sorry.
8:30.
Ag advisory is at 8:30, planning commission is at 9. And then that's December, so I don't know if I'm gonna be able to turn it around fast enough to get to a meeting in December in the board, but it will get scheduled at a future board meeting after that. So a quickly approaching board meeting after that. So I'll just let it sit. Okie dokie.
Okay. With that, I do have one comment. One, to answer that earlier question on our calendar. I'm not sure if you can read that text, but November 27th is our next meeting. And then December 11th will be the last meeting of the year. And going back, one thing to bring up that I was thinking about recently that I'm not sure is on anyone's radar. With the first thing we did when we had a little window between a one-off task from the board for early activation, and then we got to start the holistic approach, and then we got resolution, 2019 or whatever, the 2022-119. I think that's it. I can't remember. Anyway, all the temporary structures hoops that set us on a different path. We did cover a vision statement at that time. We had a lot of input from all the task force members and public input. We went through a few different versions of it, and we approved a vision statement. However, that vision statement at the time, we weren't looking at bringing these items incrementally to the board for approval. We were still looking at, you know, the big picture, come up with a big ordinance. Should we include that vision statement with the other items going forward for approval to the Ag Advisory Committee, Planning Commission, and then Board of Supervisors? So
That makes sense to me. We might want to add it to our agenda as well, so that it's clearly communicated to the public. And that's something
Yes.
that you approved, the task force approved?
that is correct. Yeah. Back in September 2022.
All right.
A lifetime ago.
I know. It feels like a long time. Yep. Okay, what was I just thinking?
Adjournment.
Oh, no, wait. So just as an idea, one of the things I was thinking about for next meeting is we want to focus on development standards that are not going to get altered by whatever the board decides to do with the different stuff. So we'll pull out some of the general ones. Like the first one that jumps out at me is stuff that we require in the application. We may be able to streamline some of that stuff and sync it with the state where necessary. So I'm planning on adding that to the next agenda for us to chew on. So your homework for the week, 2 weeks, is please take a look at the first few pages in green, because it lists most everything on the app that is required for the application, including all the different types of management reports and things like that. And we'll cover that at our next meeting. Does that sound good to the task force?
Yeah, so can you tell us, section numbers where we start?
Absolutely. So past that table thingy, and it would be 27.3, AT.
1-3.
Number
27.13 AT or
27.13,
Okay.
AT1, development standards, the little 2 I's, however you're supposed to say that. It starts with general requirements. And then keep going. It includes co-location and clustering, operating hours, prohibited activities. Actually, that's general stuff. Let's do general stuff first, and then we'll go on to application. Yeah, so
Yeah, the two are kind of mixed in together. You have the general requirements here with everything that a project is required to do, and then on the next page, that section 3 of 2713 AT is the property management plan and the 5 main sections that need to be covered there. So it's still kind of mixed up into different areas.
And application up to, E, up to the findings for minor and major use permit required findings. So on your document, it is pages 27 starting on 27-111 and going to 129. And if we don't get through all of it, the first meeting, we'll just keep going. 111 through 129. General requirements and part of the application. What's the application? All right, excellent. We will go on and do we need a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Excellent. Rebecca?
Second.
Nara? All those in favor?
Aye.
Awesome. The meeting stands adjourned. Thanks everybody for attending on Zoom, and thanks everybody for being here.